Montmartre, my favorite neighborhood in Paris. Montmartre's history dates back to the 3rd century, when the Romans first settled Paris. The legend behind Montmatre name, which means Mountain of the Martyr in Latin, is that in the 3rd century, a bishop named Denis lived in Paris, and he, along with 2 other saints, were decapitated for their sins. Saint Denis scooped up his head, and carried it in his arms, as he traveled several kilometers north of Paris, continuously preaching his sermon, until he reached a high hill. The Saint-Pierre de Montmartre was built in 1134. There was also a Benedictine monastery, in the Royal Abbey of Montmartre. 13 windmills were built, to grind various types of grain in the 1500s, and all but 2 of them still survive today. The 2 locations occupied the majority of Montmartre area until 1790, when the French Revolution ordered the monastery to be demolished to make way for gypsum mines, which manufactured plaster. Montmartre was an independent village, just north of Paris until 1860, when it was merged into the metropolis. Perhaps this is why it still feels like a village in the country, as opposed to most other Parisian areas. Montmartre was a paradise for artists in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and many of today's most famous artists, including Renoir, Degas, Toulouse-Lautrec, Van Gogh, and Picasso, lived and painted here. The Sacré-Cœur Basilica, which sits 427 feet above Paris, and is on our list of fantastic Parisian churches to see, that aren't Notre Dame, is the most popular site in Montmartre. Sacré Roman Byzantine Cœur's design, with its creamy, white travertine stone towers, appears to be centuries old, yet it is actually a 20th century basilica. 2 lost wars, the Franco-Prussian War, and the 1870–71 Paris Commune insurrection, destroyed Paris in 1871. Sacré-Cœur was created to commemorate the soldiers who died in the Franco-Prussian War, and to boost the city's morale. The basilica was supposed to open in 1914, but due to the delay of World War I, Sacré-Cœur was not dedicated until 1918. The vast mosaic above the altar, named Christ in Majesty, depicts Christ in white robes, with his arms stretching out and flashing a golden heart, is the focus of the inside of Sacré-Cœur. It is one of the world's largest mosaics. At Sacré-Cœur, Mass is held at least 3 times a day, with additional times added on holidays. The charming Place du Tertre Square, just around the corner from Sacré-Cœur, is alive with the spirit of the old artist community, with 140 artists painting portraits and landscapes right on the spot. An original watercolor of Paris can be purchased for as low as $25, or a large-scale oil painting can be purchased for over $1,000. Your portrait can be completed in as little as 20 minutes. The Place du Tertre is surrounded by a variety of bustling outdoor eateries. You can have a drink or a snack while watching the artists at work. Rue de l'Abreuvoir is a winding lane surrounded with ivy-covered freestanding houses from the late 1800s, a rarity in Paris, as much of the city is made up of apartment buildings. It has been named one of the most beautiful streets in Paris. The beautiful La Maison Rose, the Pink House, a restaurant and café since 1905, that was recently featured in the hit TV series Emily in Paris, is located at the foot of the street. Place Dalida, on the other end of Rue de l'Abreuvoir, is a tree-lined area with a bronze statue of Dalida, the French singing sensation, who sold over 170 million records worldwide, over a career that spanned the 1950s to the mid-1980s. At the Museum of Montmartre, you can get a real feel of what life was like in Montmartre at the turn of the century. The complex of buildings was originally home to painter Pierre-Auguste Renoir's home and studio. Later, it was home to Suzanne Volodone, one of the few famous female artists of her day. Through a succession of posters, objects, sketches, and paintings. The rich history of Montmartre at the turn of the 20th century is presented, as well as the creative community of the time, which included poets, writers, actors, dancers, painters, and musicians. A magnificent garden is also part of the complex. Cabaret au Lapin Agile, which was once the haunt of struggling artists and authors in Montmartre in the 19th century, including Renoir, Apollinaire, Modiani, and Utrillo, is still in business and continues to put on nightly shows. Picasso is claimed to have been so destitute as a young man that he asked the owner of Lapin Agile for food and wine, in exchange for one of his early figurative works. Avenue Juno is one of Montmartre's most famous streets, flanked with former private homes in the Art Deco style, and opulent Art Nouveau apartment buildings. Only a few blocks from Montmartre's more popular district is this peaceful residential neighborhood, with little automobile or foot traffic. Villa Leandra is a cul-de-sac off Avenue Juno, with a row of unusual cottage-style buildings, dating from 1926. The Montmartre Cemetery is just as fascinating as the Père Lachaise Cemetery, despite its lesser fame. The cemetery was created in 1825, on the site of an abandoned gypsum mine, because the other Paris cemeteries were running out of space. Designer Pierre Cardin, singer Dalida, artist Edgar Degas, novelist Alexandre Dumas, American vocalist Carol Fredericks, actress Jeanne Moreau, and writer Émile Zola, are among the many famous Parisians whose tombstones and mausoleums may be seen in Montmartre Cemetery.